part of the world you're currently watching this video blog, and I'm pretty sure that wherever part of the world you're in, you've managed to see the meeting between Mr. Trump and Zelensky yesterday. It was a very tense and pointed meeting that no one thought would take place. I know that there were some sort of animosity between the two parties, but I didn't think that Zelensky would initiate such unprofessional, undiplomatic, and very unproductive engagement with the new administration. What I'm guessing is he's gotten used to dealing with the Democrats, especially the Biden administration, where he basically just bark and yell at them and tell them what he wants, like a little spoiled little kid, and they, give in and give him whatever he wants. So that wasn't the case for the Trump administration. He managed to bark at the wrong neighbors, and he realized that fairly quickly when Vice President Vance and President Trump checked him on it. They definitely did not care much for that kind of disrespect inside the Oval Office in their home turf. Imagine if somebody comes over your house and making demands and barking at you, and the same person had been acting up for many years, and that same person comes to you and tells you got to give him what he wants, or else he's gonna start rolling all over the floor and making a big scene out of it, which Zelensky definitely did yesterday. Okay, folks, he mistook the Republican administration to be the Democrat rug that he was stepping on in the past. I'm gonna cross here and get on the other side of the road. But anyway, it was a really stressful and intense engagement between Mr. Trump and Zelensky. And so, yeah, folks, I just thought I reflect a little bit on what took place, because for the last 3 years that this war's been ongoing, Mr. Zelensky pretty much got everything he wanted. Okay, the Biden administration didn't even question his motivations. They just basically gave in and wrote a blank check for him to use and abuse. So obviously the Trump administration will not have that, especially not inside the Oval Office, and not in a very sacred and political in the political historical content in the Oval Office to have a foreign person. I wouldn't even call him Zelensky a leader. A foreign person be barking at them, yelling and throwing a fit. Okay, folks, we don't necessarily have to help them. I don't know if the world understands that America does not have to support and provide aid to Ukraine. We're doing it out of courtesy, out of the goodness of our heart. We wanted to, give them a fighting chance, quote unquote. But Fortunately, he does not know how to be thankful, does not know how to be respectful of the American people who's struggling and have basically done everything to support his corrupt war that could have been prevented years ago. Okay, folks. Yeah, so anyway, I just thought I reflect on it because everybody around the world's talking about it, right? They see it, they pretty much opine and try to understand what took place, and some people are actually taking, you know, Zelensky's side. They're saying that he was bullied and that it was all a big setup. All right, think about it. Think about this. If he was set up, okay, why would the new administration want to do that when they want to have a natural resource deal, the rare earth deal, you know, taking, you know, sign off on? Okay, they didn't have any reason or whatever form of justification to set him up, because they want the rare earth deal, because we've given Zelensky hundreds of billions of US tax dollars, okay, and we want something in return for that, because he basically squandered our own resources, right? And so now he's upset because the new administration won't let him get his way and act up and like a, you know, little spoiled brat. And so he's pissed off and he's frustrated, and so he decided to take out his frustrations yesterday on the Trump administration. So I'll be really shocked to see who's going to be taking his side from here on out. Not only did he jeopardize the resources and security of his country coming from the US administration, the Trump administration, he also could potentially exacerbate the condition in his country, and that will trickle into other countries in the region. Okay, folks, so that's just my opinion. All right, I don't know what motivated him to act up yesterday, but he was not in a position to tell the Trump administration on what he thinks they should be doing. They were basically trying to provide assistance to him, and basically disrespected them. It was very ungrateful, not just to the Trump administration, but also to the American people who's, you know, paying into our taxes. And he's spent his award that could have been, you know, and lives could have been saved. But yet he decided to engage the Russians. The Russians actually didn't want to continue on fighting. You know, the first couple of weeks, after they invaded Ukraine, they wanted to have a ceasefire and peace talk right off the bat, and Zelensky decided not to engage. So now Zelensky's throwing a fit and trying to convince the world that the Trump administration was taking advantage of him and was bullying him. You know, the balls on this guy is just unbelievable, right? I mean, again, America does not have to support his war. We do not have to provide aid, relief, or weapons to Ukraine. But yet, they're there. because we believe that we should be helping them because they don't have those resources. All right, folks. So that's just how everything is with this administration, with Zelensky. It's just going downhill from there. I just feel it, just because they're pulling us into this conflict with Russia. They wanted to join NATO, and they want to be a part of the European Union. And so once they join NATO and they feel that they need to poke their finger into the Russian society and provoke them to want to, go into a conflict again, they have NATO backing them. This peace guarantee is not really about, protecting Ukraine. It's about basically making sure that if they were to engage, if they were to engage the Russians, that they have the support of the U.S. as well as any other countries in the region and Europe, right, within NATO member countries. So that's what's going on. It's just one of those things, folks. It's like they're trying to bait us. Zelensky's regime is trying to bait America to going into a conflict where American soldiers will have to die and fight off the Russians, which we don't want at all. The Russians don't want to fight Americans. Americans don't want to fight Russians, because that will be the onset of World War III. Okay, we know what World War II was like. Okay, and the Russians actually were partners of the U.S. back in World War II fighting the Nazis. So obviously the Russians don't want to fight us, and I don't believe Americans want to fight Russia either. But yet Ukraine is trying to provoke World War III to take place by trying to instigate a fight with the Russians, which they started back in 2021. Okay, they were attacking those territories that sided with the Russian Federation in the 2014 referendum. They voted. They actually had a legal event that took place where the population of Crimea, Luhansk, and Donbass voted to be a part of the Russian Federation, and they actually carried the flags in those territories, the Russian flag. So it's one of those things, folks. It's just it's a never-ending struggle for people that are trying to de-escalate the war and stop the war completely. Every time people talks about ending the war, Zelensky would say, well, it's going to be a temporary band-aid. No, it's not. Once Zelensky's gone, the next leader of Ukraine will not even think about fighting the Russians. They will not try to provoke, another war with the Russians, okay? And to be honest, I don't think anybody in Europe wants a war with the Russians, even though they keep talking about, supporting Ukraine and providing additional weaponry and aid to them. I don't think anybody in Europe, if they're thinking straight, would want to engage the Russians. All right, folks. So yeah, anyway, going back to the meeting at the Oval Office yesterday, that was so, unexpected. Like I was saying, everybody knew that, Mr. Trump and Mr. Zelensky aren't exactly best of friends. Everybody understands that. And Mr. Trump has a really good reason why he doesn't like Zelensky. Special because of all the carnage and human suffering that Zelensky had caused to his own people and surrounding, communities in the region. Even the markets of Central and Eastern Europe were destabilized by this war. So that's what's going on, folks. I just don't understand who would want to support Zelensky, given that his performance yesterday did not, solidify his overall approach to diplomacy. He did not exercise, management skills, diplomatic skills, or any form of behavioral management, right, folks? He just basically acted up and he took it out on the sitting president. So anyway, I can't really see what y'all are typing, so I'm just gonna keep on talking. It's too sunny and bright outside. I can't see what you're typing. Hopefully some of you are typing things that are worth reading, well, because I'll be looking at it when I get back home. Anyway, yeah, so it was a very unfortunate event that took place at the White House yesterday, right? And it's just not going to improve the overall relations between Russia and the US. As I was saying, Mr. Zelensky had gotten so used to barking down the Democrat Biden administration and getting them to yield to him, to give him everything and anything that he asked for, even to the point that, he wants to engage the Russians. He actually tried to provoke them further by shooting into the Russian, territories with U.S. provided weapons. He wanted to get that kind of, response from the Russians. He tried to provoke them to go into a World War III situation with NATO countries. Okay, folks, it's just so stupid. And yet, the Biden administration didn't do anything about it. They just let him do his thing, right? So, imagine if another war breaks out of Europe. Who's gonna be on the hook to stop that or to fight back if the Russians were to invade the whole continent of Europe? Okay, it's gonna be the NATO countries. It's gonna be the US. Okay, and do we really want a World War II to happen anyway? What's the point for it? Over Ukraine that initiated the conflict back in 2021? Is that something that we really want to, get involved in? An instigated war that was provoked by the Ukrainians so that they can feel like they're superior, that they can feel like they are actually doing their people a favor, the world a favor, Europe a favor. I don't think so. I don't think anybody would want to support a war against Russia when the Russians simply want to defend their territory. That's all they wanted to do. And those territories that voted to join the Russian Federation in Crimea, Donbass and Luhansk, wanted to be a part of the Russian Federation. They actually had a referendum. So if Zelensky really wants to get those territories back, why doesn't he just call a referendum? Have people vote on it. Do they want to become the old, outdated section of Ukraine, or do they want to be more prosperous, more sophisticated, and a market that is booming like the Russians? So have them call another referendum. Don't just invade, don't just attack these, territories that sided with the Russians. Have another referendum and see which side they want to be with. All right, folks. So, yeah, that's just something that I thought I'd put there, because an ongoing war like, in Ukraine does not need to be happening. I was in the region last year. Okay, I spent almost a whole month near the border of Ukraine. And guess what? People in the western section of Ukraine does not want the war to continue on. It's disrupting everything pertaining to their lives, their overall comfort and ability to develop their market capacity. So what's the purpose of a war in the year 2025? Okay, folks. So I thought I just, put this question out there. All right. So anyhow, Zelensky went over to Ukraine. To UK, in London, and had a meeting with Starmer. And for some reason, Starmer thought that what Zelensky did was commendable. He was applauding what Zelensky did, as if they really wanted, something like this to escalate, the rift between the White House and Zelensky. What are they going to do if it does escalate to the point that the U.S. is no longer talking to the Ukrainians? Who are they going to go turn to? Who's going to support them? Who's going to, pay for this war that could have been stopped years ago? All right, folks. So that's just one of those things, right? It's a never-ending struggle when you're dealing with, Zelensky's regime. I understand there's some people even in Ukraine that, approve what he did, but I just simply cannot understand who would, in the right mind, would travel to a foreign country asking for the support of that foreign country and badmouth and disrespect, the decision maker of that country. Just very unproductive. Okay, I realize they come from a different, society, different culture, mindset, engagement, attitudes. I realize that. I've worked in the region for over a decade. All right, folks. But in all reality, not everybody in Eastern Europe are uncontrollable like Zelensky is. Okay, there are a lot of Eastern Europeans, Central Europeans that knows how to engage in diplomacy and have the skills to work with other people. Okay, folks, that's just the reality of things. Zelensky have gotten so used to dealing with the Democrat administration, Biden administration, in which he basically just barks down his orders. Okay, and they would basically operate like a genie in a bottle. Okay, your wishes are command. So they basically just gave him everything and anything. Okay, folks. Look, America is one diverse country. Our society comes from all over the world. Okay, we have people from Europe, from Asia, from South America, Africa, Middle East, you name it, they all reside in America. But there is a consensus among, these immigrants and people from around the world on behavioral issues, behavioral conditions and issues that you should deploy when you're dealing with our leaders, our elected leaders. Okay, we might not all agree with each other in terms of politics, but there is a consensus on how we should, respect our leaders, our elected officials, even though we don't always agree with them. All right, so Zelensky, by doing what he did, was very disrespectful to the American people. Okay, he didn't just disrespect the White House and the president's office, but the people that elected this president. Reason being is that he was here asking for the administration to provide money to him. Okay, they're asking the administration to use our tax dollars to basically support the war that he instigated. Okay, now I can see all this. LL, D's Goodies, John Youngquist. All right. Thanks for all the texts. D Goodies, I see all that else. I'm glad that you're enjoying my video blog, even though you might not always agree with what I'm saying, but I'm glad that you're actually having a good time. So, type away. That doesn't offend me whatsoever. I like dissent. I like people that doesn't agree with me, voice their disagreement. That's how I operate. I'm an equal opportunity YouTuber, vlogger, and I like people telling me that they don't necessarily agree with what I'm saying. All right, folks. So with this said, I just thought I'd let y'all know that we want to make sure that the American people support this administration. I don't care if you're a Republican, Democrat, or an independent. You need to support the decision of this current administration, just because they are trying to de-escalate the war, stop the carnage, and bring the region back to normalcy. That's what they've been trying to do since they got appointed into office, last month. Or actually, today's March, so 2 months ago, right? So that's basically something that y'all need to think about, just because the American public doesn't want to continue to support this war. It's very counterproductive. It's destroying, the lives of the next generations of Ukrainians. And even, the Russians that don't want to engage into this war are now pulled into it because, egos and all these stupidity is prevalent in the Zelensky regime. Okay, folks, they could have easily ended the war, but they decided not to. So, this said, folks, I'm glad that you're commenting. Let me know if there's anything that you want me to talk about specifically. But yeah, that's just how things are, right? You gotta have the motivation to stop these kinds of wars, and until you do that, nothing will happen. And I'm glad that the Trump administration is actually standing up against Zelensky, because he's a spoiled brat. Okay, he's basically disrupted so many lives and markets in the region for no apparent reason. When he was campaigning for office, his main objective was to bring back those territories decided by whatever it is that needs to happen and needs to be done, so that he can reunify those territories decided with the Russians. But in all reality, they don't want to be a part of Ukraine, those territories. They voted in a referendum siding and taking the sides of the Russian because they want to be Russians. They identify as Russians. All right, folks. And for some reason, Zelensky thought that even though he doesn't have the military and he doesn't have the ability to engage the Russians, to just go ahead and provoke them, and hopefully the US and European member countries of NATO would support him. So very, very unproductive. Thousands of Ukrainians have died. Okay, buildings, that are historical, and various, you know, monuments have been destroyed for what? A political ideology that was so disjointed and very counterproductive. Okay, folks. So yeah, I just thought I'd let you all know what I think and feel as far as what took place yesterday and the overall escalation of this war, and where it is today. All right, folks, it's just one of these things. Wars happening anymore. All right, in today's reality, today's world, there shouldn't be any wars anymore. There's an abundance of resources. There's an abundance of information to help build capacity. Share this earth and share the resources of this planet. Okay. So, yeah, I just thought I'd let you guys know about how I feel about what took place yesterday, because I've been operating in Eastern Europe for over a decade, right? And to me, the region is on its way up. It's developing. It's definitely advancing in overall capacity and, you know, knowledge of the population and everything else that would basically create a new market economy for the region. And then here comes this war in Ukraine. You know, it will basically take back the region decades, okay, to be able to rebuild Ukraine and you know, various lives, you know, advancing again and coming back to Ukraine and wanting to live there. Many people have been displaced. All right, folks. So that's the whole reality of things. You know, at this point in the game, you would think that people would be mindful of the effects and ramifications of war by this, you know, by now. But unfortunately, that's not the case. You know, and yesterday was a clear, you know, indication of how Zelensky operates. He's so unpredictable and unstable, which basically destabilized his own country. Okay, folks, made a lot of poor decisions regarding engaging the Russians. I mean, they didn't want to be a part of this war. They, you know, the Russians actually tried to end the war, you know, a few weeks when it started, because they know the outcome of it. They're fighting, you know, civilians. They're fighting people that weren't trained in combat, so they know what would be, you know, the ramification of a war. You know, so the Russians didn't want to continue to engage. But lo and behold, you have, you know, people advising Zelensky, and Zelensky himself decided that, you know, diplomacy and you know, peace talks is off the table. Okay, even though a lot of his people are being killed off, they're getting disseminated, and you know, they aren't able to fight. They're just getting mowed down by a professional military force. So what do you do when people are so hard-headed that they basically neglect to realize the importance of peace, the importance of, you know, diplomacy? Okay, it's just unbelievable that today, in the year 2025, there's a war happening in Europe. You know, it may be in a third world country somewhere in a very different continent. I can imagine a war, you know, taking shape. But in all reality, in Europe, they have an abundance of resources compared to any other continents. And on top of that, they could have amicably solved the issues. You know, there's so many ways and vehicles for the Europeans to basically end the war amicably and diplomatically. All right. but they decided to keep on fighting, and with no avail, because everybody knows what's going to be the outcome of this war. It's going to be more dead Ukrainians and more lives disrupted and buildings torn down over a political ideology. And their leader decided to disrespect the new administration. Okay, you would think that moving forward, since they already know that the Republicans are very different to the Democrats, you would think that they would be ready for that. You would think that they would want to, kind of tone things down and develop a way to communicate with a very different mindset of administration, but that didn't happen. All right, folks, it's just, I don't know. It's like they didn't even prepare for this meeting that took place yesterday. It's like, all right, whatever goes, goes. So it didn't look very professional at all. And I don't know if they've had any coaches to help them with their diplomatic skills. Just because who would have barked a president in front of the press? I just don't understand who would want to do that. All right, folks. So anyway, I just thought I opine on the subject. It's just one of those things, right? That you would think in the year 2025, people would be a little bit calmer and would want to enjoy life and preserve life, liberty, and justice, and freedom of speech. But unfortunately, there's still people out there that operate as if they live in the Ice Age or the Stone Age. They operate like the Neanderthals. They don't really care about other people's point of view or in life, apparently. So yeah, I was just talking to one of my friends in Eastern Europe the other day, and she was telling me, because there's also an issue in Romania with the election being annulled in December. And she was telling me, how people are so dissatisfied with, the overall decision of their courts there to basically annul the first round of the presidential election, because apparently the elite class didn't like the outcome of the first round. So, yeah, anyway, there's a lot of things going on in Europe. And, at this point in the game, the decision makers in that region are hard pressed to make the right choices. Mainly because they're pressured, or they are trying to appease certain, partners outside of their region, trying to prove to them that they know how to operate in a democratic society, but most of them really have yet to develop and evolve into a more democratic society, because most of the time they're just piggybacking off of other people's democracy. They see something, they hear something happening in a different country, and they just figure they'll follow it, even though not really knowing fully, what's being endorsed to them or how it will pertain to their own society. So yeah, very unfortunate. But at this point in the game, I just hope that things settles, especially in Central and Eastern Europe. That part of the world is already hard pressed with a lot of problems. Okay, there is no need for more conflicts and political issues and geopolitical problems to arise. Okay, because I think for the most part, people in Central and Eastern Europe have had enough of it. They're tired and sick of all these conflicts that are so counterproductive. It's just one of those things. They're like, okay, are we really advancing as a society, or are we just keeping ourselves from becoming that democracy that we've always wanted? you know, grow our markets, grow our capacity, live just like anybody else in the Western world. So that's the situation, folks. It's just one of those things that it's so problematic when people wants to live in the past. And territorial issues, land grabbing issues, those shouldn't be a problem in today's world. You know, the planet has tons of land. You know, people should focus on building capacity more than trying to take over another, you know, society or another land, or grab another, you know, territory, whatever. But when people aren't able to think outside of the box, when people are simply, you know, aren't able to exercise good judgment, things like this happen. These kinds of wars are very preventable. I mean, I guarantee you, 100%, I guarantee you that if Ukraine had enough resources, money-wise and, you know, economic capacity-wise, there will not be a war today. Okay? There simply won't be a need for them to try to join the European Union or even NATO. Okay? Because of the lack of resources, because of the lack of their overall marketability to sustain, you know, livelihood and job creation in Ukraine, they resorted into siding with the richest, you know, side of the Western hemisphere, so that they can get access to those resources. So instead of going into war, why didn't they just go ahead and borrow money and build their capacity with those resources that they're now putting in order to fight off the Russians? I mean, did anybody ever stop and think, if all Ukraine needs is to build their market capacity, create jobs, why did they have to engage the Russians? Okay. Does that ever occur to anyone? Anyway, yeah, it's getting warm over here, so I'm gonna try to look for a shade. But yeah, so that's basically, you know, my thought on this issue. It's just a never-ending struggle, right, folks? When so many people have died, and yet the answer of the Ukrainian, you know, population and the regime is to basically continue to fight the war with the Russians. Okay, is that in their best interest? I mean, what's going to solve, you know, this conflict when you're no longer able to survive? How do you solve a conflict when all your people are dead? All right, folks. So, just one of those things that it's so unpredictable that Ukraine would want to operate the way they operated yesterday. Okay, you would think that they would be more humble and down to earth and then want to, you know, be diplomatic, right? But no, that's not in their agenda. You know, it's like they're making a mockery of the U.S. government and the population, just trying to help them. Okay, why would they want to, you know, alienate the only administration that can help them? Okay, doesn't make sense to me. All right, folks. So, yeah, I just thought I'd put this question out there and, you know, have you guys consider it, because at this point in the game, not only is Ukraine out of weapons, out of people, they're also out of friends. And the more that they alienate their friends and allies, the more they're going to end up having to fight on their own. So that's the whole reality of this issue, right? So I just thought that it's in the best interest of the Ukrainians to end this war and just get rid of Zelensky. He's not very productive. He's done no good for his own people and country, right? And his overall performance yesterday, I know he's an actor, but that's definitely not gonna win him the Golden Globes. I know he wants to be a famous Hollywood, entertainer. I mean, that's one of his main objective ever since he started acting and performing, that he wanted to be, just like any other American actors. And so the onset of the war, his first target audience were celebrities, okay, in Hollywood. All right, folks. So yeah, that's just the whole issue with Zelensky. He's got this pipe dream going on in his head, thinking that when he's so famous and is a celebrity, Hollywood celebrity, that he would have reached his goals in life. Okay, he basically used his country and government, all right, to gain notoriety in Hollywood. Okay, he sacrificed his people, he sacrificed his country over an ideology that is so corrupt that was only serve his purpose. It didn't serve anyone's purpose but his. So yeah, which is very unfortunate, because I would have thought that people in Ukraine and people around the world would have caught up on it. They would have, say, oh, wait a second, is this guy really acting as a leader, or is he operating as a dictator, tyrant, and, authoritarian? Nobody took the time to even ask that question. So, right, it's very unfortunate. So having said that, folks, it's good talking to you. Please make sure to like and subscribe to our channel. We are now available on Locals, BitChute, and Odyssey. I had to diversify our platform so that we can continue to get access, and those that are trying to get access to us from other countries that doesn't have YouTube or any of our platforms will have a diverse, option of other resources, so that they can follow us and connect with us on our various channels. So yeah, anyway, folks, thank you for joining me. Keep those comments coming. I don't get offended. I've kind of gotten used to all sorts of comments, so just send them out my way, so I know that you guys are actually listening and paying attention to what I'm saying. Okay, that said, thank you for joining. Talk to you later. Bye bye.